a friend of the family. Okay, recording has started, I guess. So there was a friend of my family that knew somebody, and I ended up getting a job there. Whereas the company normally would only hire people who were in college programs for programming. So knowing somebody got me into a position that I couldn't have normally got into with my skills that I had, because I didn't have a good way of proving my skills. Okay, so my big advice is to make friends, whether you're doing, whether you want to get involved in game development, or you want to get into a job doing UX design like I do, you want to get into doing any kind of programming job, is to make friends. And the reason why I'm going to mention this so many times is because my friends, the guy in the hat here got me my next job, by because Eric, the guy here, he is a expert programmer. At the time, he was working at Cafe Press, which is like has a local headquarters here. He told he told his boss about me, and my interview with the boss basically consisted of him going to a coffee shop with me and saying, Eric says that you could do the job, so I'm not going to bother asking you any questions. Just I'm going to tell you about the projects that we're working on. You see if you like that. And it was the easiest interview that I've ever had. It was weird because I didn't have to prove myself. There was already this idea that somebody vouched for me, and so the boss knew that I could do the job because he trusted Eric, and Eric does a great job. And so the interview basically was, you got the job, now let me tell you about what we're doing, and you tell me how much you need to make. And on that interview, which was the weirdest interview I've ever had, I mentioned a number of how much money I needed to make, and then when I actually got the paperwork for the job, the guy had added 5K to it. So I knew that I had asked for too little, because I'm new at all this stuff and I have no idea. I never had a salary job before this, and so I asked for something like what the recruiter had said was a good going rate, and they added to that because I guess I went under what they expected me to charge. Anyway, and all of this is to say, knowing somebody that could vouch for me at their employer, skipped the entire interview process. I never filled out an application. I never submitted a resume. It was literally just, Eric says you could do the job, so here we go. And that's something that, like, I don't know. It feels like a huge privilege kind of thing to have happen to you. And so all the effort that I see people put into keeping the resumes up to date, which is something that I still do, filling out applications and never hearing back. I feel like I am so privileged to have not had to do that. And in later jobs and stuff, I would apply for places and I would definitely fill out applications and everything, but it's almost always been knowing somebody who's got me the job. So my second piece of advice, well, I guess the first piece of advice was to practice. The second thing was to make friends and know people, actual friends, not just. I don't really like the term networking, because it implies to me that you've got this like ulterior motive of just furthering your career or something like that, when really finding people that are interested in the same things as you and making friends with them, like actual friends, even if it doesn't end up getting you a job, you have better chances of getting a job that way, and you have friends, and so there's like no downside to it. Whereas if you just think of it like networking, you're just kind of trying to see what you can get out of people, and I don't know, I feel like I'd rather have genuine friends. So and also they're into the same stuff that I'm into, so that's cool. So yeah, connections can get you jobs. That's the huge one huge takeaway. The next thing is, and this slides are going in the wrong order. When you're starting out and you're trying, a lot of people will say like, oh, I want to get into programming, or wanted to get into web development, but I don't know what language to pick. I've heard from my friend that C# is good. I've heard from this other person that JavaScript is good. I've heard somebody say Ruby is good. I don't know what to do. And when I put in my effort into learning this thing, I don't want to have to learn another language later. And the thing that I always talk about is that programming languages are not like learning French versus Chinese. It's almost like a dialect more than separate languages. Like if you understand the basic concepts that are in JavaScript, that's a language that is kind of based on the formatting and stuff from C originally, and so you're gonna like understand. Like you can probably, if you have an understanding of JavaScript and you look at some C# code, you could probably kind of understand what's going on. And also, like if you take JavaScript and you take away all the brackets and the semicolons and stuff, all of that formatting, and you look at some Python, the logic and stuff is going to be pretty similar. The formatting just looks a little different. So don't overthink it. Don't try to figure out what your end goal language is going to be. Just hit the trail. Just start learning stuff. Start making stuff. And the other thing that I see some people doing when they're starting out is trying to, especially in game development, a lot of people try to study books on how to make video games, and they want to have an understanding of how to make every single part of their game before they start it. And you can equate this to, like, on the web dev side, you want to make a program. Say you wanted to make a Twitter clone or something. You say, oh, it's got to have all of this and all this, and you plan it all out, and you want to learn how to do all of those things before you even get started. But sometimes people haven't even typed something and seen that show up on a web page. So it's like, or they haven't, in the game dev analogy, they haven't like made a box on the screen and then make it move with the arrow keys. Just do some basic stuff to get a feel for it. Do something super painfully simple, like simpler than you ever would want to do, because those are building blocks and pieces that will add up to make something bigger later. And so what I love learning from practical experience, some people can read a whole book on programming and maybe retain it, but I sure can't. So like every time that I tried to learn code, I would just start reading the first chapter of a book, and I would get lost before I even understood what all the different types of variables were. And none of it made any sense. And what I needed to do was just open up a text editor and start typing some stuff and then see what it did. Or take some code and try to, sorry, my screen went away here. Or take some code and just try to modify it and see what happens. So when you get stuck, which is going to happen, it's not if you get stuck, you've got tools. And so Google, number one. If you have a problem when you're trying to learn how to make something and you get stuck and you don't Google it, that's Googling is a skill. Like it's hard to explain this to an employer that you can Google your way out of problems, but 90% of the things that I do, I don't remember the exact formatting for something, or I don't remember exactly how to do something, and I search for it. Like if the internet went down, I would be screwed. Like it's really hard to do what I do without Googling stuff all the time. And if you can't figure it out by Googling it and finding something on the docs, like for JavaScript, I use MDN all the time, which is the Mozilla Developer Network, like the official docs for JavaScript. For CSS, I mean, there's tons of stuff on Stack Overflow. It's an awesome resource. But if you Google your problem and you can't figure it out, mentors are great, and I don't just mean code level mentors, but also people that you know in the community. So like are you all familiar with the Louisville Tech Slack? Like are people on that Slack also? That's a great resource, and I could drop a link to that if you're not already on it. But that's like a couple thousand people in Louisville that do web dev and software dev stuff, and they're all on there, and they can help you out. Asking questions, like if you are stuck on something and you ask a question, like nobody should shame anybody for doing that. Like there's just normal stuff that you have to do to learn things. So the community is a great option. If you can't Google something, don't cut your arm off. Get some help if you can. There are a lot of other people out there, and this is kind of a bad joke. Anyway, so you're getting you want to get a lot of times when I talk to people from Louisville, they're interested in getting their first job in tech stuff, in programming or in web dev or whatever. My number one thing that I can recommend, I'll say it again, is like who you know. It's not so easy to go to meetups right now, but there's still opportunities to do events. I know that Codepalooza has done in-person events a couple of times now, and there are still some meetups. I would really recommend getting to know people, make some friends, and try to find people who are doing similar stuff to you that are maybe a little bit further ahead, ask questions, stuff like that. Proof of relevant work. This really comes down to a portfolio. I would say that a portfolio is a great way to show that you can finish things, that you can, what your work is like. A potential employer is probably not going to download your repos on GitHub and try running them and make sure that everything works. But just looking at your GitHub page and seeing that you have lots of commits and seeing that you have lots of projects that you've worked on shows effort, and it shows a lot of like that you're a self-starter and that you can try to do a lot of things, even if it's not for work, that you're interested in this and that you care about it. And so having a good portfolio, even using your GitHub page as a portfolio, is a good option. But if you're trying to get into web development, having a website of your own with like screenshots of all your projects and stuff like that is something that it would be a great project. It'd be a great project to have on your GitHub, is the portfolio where you host all your projects. Formal training is great. Like I'm putting everything in this list, like larger text at the top for the things that I think are more important. So formal training is like is probably what I would consider Code Louisville or college classes. And so it's stuff that I didn't have, and it's stuff that would have benefited me and helped me a lot, but I didn't have it, and I got by on the other two, which is showing actual things that I've done. And so I would consider those probably more important, but still what you're doing is huge, and it'll definitely help. So it's up there. Past job experience. For most of us, when we get our first job in tech, we haven't had relevant jobs before that, so it doesn't really matter that much. So I put it lower on the list, but it does show that you have done some stuff and worked at other places, and have done that before. Like before my past job experience on my resume at my first job that I got hired at was like I ran my own like web design business where I made websites for people, and I did that for a few years, and wasn't really much to show, but I put it on there and I showed some examples of my work. Resume, it's something that you just have to have, but it's less important. And then the application is just another thing you have to have, but you might be able to get by without having to worry about the application process if you know somebody. So one thing that I'd like to talk about is that when you're applying for a job, from my experience, if you can try to figure out places that you have connections at already. So like think about friends and people that you know that could vouch for you, that work at certain places where they might be able to talk to somebody. And also ask them for a referral. Not necessarily just putting their name down on the application, but maybe ask them to actually send an email to their boss and recommend you something something out of the ordinary. You have to, it's really helpful to do something weird to stand out. And a great example of that is my friend Jesse wanted to get a job at a game dev company in Chicago, and people could send in applications. They could fill out an application on the website, but he actually went on a trip to Chicago and left his business card and a note in their mailbox. And I guarantee he was the only person that did that. And so it probably stood out to them because it was something weird. And so it's like guerrilla marketing. You're marketing yourself. You're trying to stand out. You don't want to look like all the other resumes. You don't want to look like all the other applications. And a way to do that is to not just put in your application and let it be. Like try to reach out to somebody. Like even if you have to, you can go on LinkedIn and see what people work there and see if there's somebody that sounds relevant, and try to find a way to call them on the phone and just talk to them, because that person that you're going to make that connection with is going to remember that more than then when they potentially look at the resumes and applications later, they might say like, oh yeah, this person sounds like they really are interested in this because they called me. And they're, it's just putting in this extra effort, because it's not really easy to do. So yeah, don't put in your resume and then call at the end of it. And then two tips that I've heard from friends of mine that might help you or may not. It really just depends when you're talking about a resume or a job application or an interview. Don't put things on your resume that you don't want to do. So like if you say you know PHP, but you don't want to do PHP at your new job, don't mention it on your resume, because then they might say like, oh, this guy knows PHP. We've got an old application that needs fixing, and we'll get this person to come in and work on it. And then you might get hired for something that's not really up your alley anymore. And then the other thing that I've heard from friends is don't be the first person to say a number on the salary. It's really hard to do. I've screwed up on that several times. But if you can hold out, hold out. Yeah. So once you're at your first job, a really good thing to do is to find a mentor at that job. And so when you're getting to know all the people on the team, see if there's somebody who stands out as being really helpful and being someone who offers to help onboard you or get you up to speed with the technology stack that they're using, or how they set up their servers or whatever. Um, Take note of the people that you see that are really helpful and they know more than you, and kind of think of that person as a mentor. You don't have to formalize it or anything, but just like when I've worked at places, it's been really helpful to have a person who I could go to if I have questions. And sometimes when you're working at a place, there are people that are really good and helpful at that kind of stuff. And sometimes there are people where when you ask a question, it's kind of like you're bugging them. And so you want to try to figure out who's willing to help. Kind of think of that person as a mentor. And also at the first job, being adaptable is really helpful, because a lot of times I've gotten hired for doing a specific thing, and then that changes. When I was at Cafe Press, a few months after I started there, a new CEO started, and my manager left, and I had a different manager, and I was put onto a completely different task. And that's just stuff that happens. I don't really have enough clout or experience to say otherwise. It's just I had to be adaptable. And so that's just something that's happened to me at a couple jobs. And then this is the this is the part that you might not hear from your code Louisville mentors and stuff. And it's something that I've talked about with my friends quite a bit, and something that me and my other friends who do web development jobs in Louisville have noticed. Climbing up the corporate ladder, right? So like you start at a job, and the old idea is, oh, I'm gonna start at this job, and it's a good company, and I'm gonna, the company has respect for me, and I've got respect for the company, and I'm gonna work here as long as I can. I'm gonna work my butt off, and I'm gonna go, work my way up the ladder. I have not seen that happen pretty much ever in web development and stuff that I've done in the like 15 years that I've been doing this stuff. The thing that I've seen is that the way that it's supposed to work is there's a junior developer, a mid-level developer, a senior developer, and then after that you might have a chance to become an architect if that job has enough people that they can have a person be an architect. Some companies are a lot smaller and they've only got mid and senior devs, or become a manager. And so when I got started out, I was a junior developer. There was no real way for me to get a raise without leaving and going to another company. And this is the thing that you probably won't hear from a lot of people, because it's a little, I don't know, I don't hear it from anybody, unless it's like me and my friends, is that nobody's really able to get significant raises without looking for a new job. And the two ways that you can get a raise by looking for a new job is either starting at your new job and asking for more than you made at your last job, and that's the way that I've usually done it. And I've also heard of people saying that they're going to move to a new job, and then your boss wants to keep you, and they might offer you more to stay. That's happened to me also, but it wasn't enough for me to stay. So each time that I've changed jobs has been the most significant salary increase. And if I didn't change jobs, the salary increases would have been so few and far between and small that it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. So don't think of your first job as like this is the job that you're going to stay in forever, because you, just from my experience, have a way better chance of um, after you've worked at a place for a year or two and you've got some more experience as a junior developer than applying for someplace as a mid-level developer and switching to another company. And if your current company wants to keep you and give you more, then that's fine. But if not, then you move on to somewhere else, and that's fine too. Um, so yeah, so that's why I have all the bosses over here with their covering their ears. So I should have said before that if you're a boss or a hiring person, don't listen to this part. Um, yeah, so the other thing about this ladder is junior developer to mid-level developer to senior. Those all kind of make sense. The difference I would say between them is that when you're mid, that should be when you start mentoring other people, and when you feel like you are mentoring other people and people are coming to you with questions and you're helping people and you're kind of like helpful, and you're not the person that knows the least on the team, then that's a time when you can ask for a raise and a title change to try to be a mid. And then the change to senior is kind of similar. It's when you feel like when you're helpful and you know the stuff at your job really well, and you're helping lots of other people, and you're kind of the keeper of the knowledge. Architect is more of it just really depends on the company. Like I've worked at some places where they've had architects, and I've worked at some places where there's like 5 people on the team, so everybody's kind of more mid or senior. And then manager, at least with me and my friends that I've talked to about this, when they have an opportunity to be a manager of a team, they, me personally, and the friends I've talked to don't really want to do it because they want to do code still because that's what they enjoy doing. And managing people isn't really the same job anymore. And so it's a totally different thing. But sometimes people who have been programmers for a long time will get offered to be a manager of a team of programmers instead. And I've seen some people take it, and I've seen some people not want to take it. And so it just depends. So that's kind of where the ladder ends. It's not like you're gonna keep going up and be, in the C-suite of a company or something like that. There's a there's an end to it. So if you're a senior and you don't want to stop programming, you might just look for a new job every few years. Something that's more interesting. It pays a little more. But yeah, so that's basically what I've got that's career focused. If anybody wants to ask me any questions about the career stuff or about game dev stuff, we could just do questions. You could just feel free to turn your mic on and ask questions. You don't have to ask, raise your hand or anything.
What languages do you use to develop your games?
Yeah, so we started off, when me and Eric first started making games, I was learning Unity. And back then, Unity had a thing called Unity Script, which was JavaScript, but with some certain changes that they made to it. And so I was using that because I was also learning jQuery and JavaScript on my own. And when I met Eric, he was making his own game engine using JavaScript to manipulate canvas element in HTML. So it's basically HTML5 canvas. And we made probably like 15 games using that JavaScript engine. And it's on GitHub, but I wouldn't recommend using it because we haven't updated it in like 5 years. Because we eventually switched to Unity because of porting to devices like phones and stuff like that was really, really tricky with the JavaScript engine. So short answer, Unity. Long answer, if I were starting today, I would learn Godot because Unity, while Unity has been really cool and there's a ton of resources for it, the way that the company is going since it went public is really scaring me. And I don't like a lot of the stuff that they're doing with like merging with an ad company with sketchy spyware background. So I would really recommend Godot right now because it is open source, which means that what's that?
How do you spell that?
Oh, it's yeah, sorry, it's Godot. It looks like Godot. And the language you use with that is it has its own thing that's supposed to be kind of like Lua. And Lua is kind of like Python looking. So I don't know how to explain it very well. It's one of those languages that doesn't have all the syntax and stuff. It's kind of what's white space dependent. So like Python or Ruby or whatever, where it's like the spacing is what matters. But Godot, it's Godot engine.org. The great thing about this is that it's getting some donations from some big places. It's like I heard that it just got like a $8.5 million donation from somebody. So it's got some real potential. It can make some cool stuff. You could do 2D or 3D. The only thing that's a little tricky for me is the potential of exporting the games to do builds for consoles, which is something that we're starting to get into with our games. With Unity, that's straightforward and has been done, and you could do it. With Godot, I mean, I wouldn't really consider it a thing to watch out for if you're just getting started, because if you're just getting started with making games, consoles are years away for you because it's a whole nother thing. But with it can do builds for Android and iOS and computer, which is really great places to start.
What do they use to do
And
the,
if you could find,
sorry. What do they use to do graphics for
that's okay. Go
desktop
ahead.
games?
Yeah, so with for the game that I'm working on right now, I use a program called Sprite, which also has a weird spelling. It's like Sprite, but this is a tool. It's about $15, and it is basically all of the pixel art stuff from Photoshop, and it's a fantastic tool. I use it for making all the art for my game Kickbot that we're working on right now, and so I do all the art and animation for the game. But the Sprite is fantastic. Sometimes you can find it in Humble Bundles too, which is like a Humble Bundles, like a website where you can buy bundles of games and software to make games and books and all kinds of stuff. And I think I got it in some bundle a long time ago, but it's like $15, and it's really cool. And so I could show a little bit of my game so that you can get an idea of like what I made with it. So we've got a page up on Steam here, and you could see the here's the, I'll play the trailer for, it's like a gameplay trailer that we have right now. So it's like I was saying before, it's a wall jumping game. It's only 2 buttons, so use one button to jump left and one button to jump right, and you can hit both to do a butt stomp. And there's 7 different worlds, and they're yeah, so I did all the art and animation for this and half of the level design, a little bit of the programming, and Eric did the big bulk of the programming and other half of the level design. And we've been working on this now for about 4 years. It's been a long time. It's things slowed down a lot. I mean, in 2020, Eric found out that he had cancer, and he's been dealing with that since then. And it's been rough. And then I had a baby shortly after COVID, and then so a lot's gone on in our lives, and we haven't finished the game yet, but we hope to finish it soon. But we've taken a lot of personal time, which is needed.
How long on average do most projects take at any of your jobs? The ones you've been day jobs?
For sorry, I missed some of that. Could you repeat that?
For your day jobs, how long do you generally work on the same project?
Well, when it comes to games, I mean, I would say to make a commercial game, 6 months to 5 years. It's really tough to say. I would say a lot of people take several years to make a game, especially if it's something that's going to be released on Steam or consoles. This is our first game that we're putting on Steam and consoles. We're approved to come out on the Switch and stuff, which I'm really excited about. And that porting stuff is going to take time too. We've got some of it done, but it's all new to us. So this one's taken a long time. This is the longest I worked on one game, and it's not 4 years of working on it every day. It's like 4 years of working on it a couple times a week. But I think we have put in probably like 4,000 hours or something into it, because we were tracking the time for a while, and we kind of got lazy with tracking our time. Somewhere around 4,000, we stopped tracking.
For Kickbot,
and it's just working on it nights and weekends.
For Kickbot, what language and engine did you use to develop it?
Yeah, so Kickbot is Unity with C#. Yeah, it's we've been working on it for so long So it's like the recent stuff, the more recent stuff with Unity that's kind of upsetting to us. It doesn't outweigh the fact that we spent 4 years on this game and we're going to finish it with Unity, and that's going to be that. And then our next project we'll start trying to learn Godot and see how that goes. But yeah, if I'm not gonna it's Unity, it's C#, and it's
Would you,
been
for Godot, would you recommend C# as well?
oh sorry, go ahead.
For Godot, would you recommend utilizing C#?
I actually would not, because the language that has the most documentation for it is their GD script, and the language that was developed first for it. I know that the community is coming out with different languages additions for it, but I don't see any advantage to using C# over their GD script at all. And the disadvantage that I see is that something that happened with Unity is when I started with Unity, there were 3 languages that you could use. One was Unity script, which was like JavaScript. One was called Boo, which was a weird language that I hadn't heard of before. It was kind of like Lua. And then the other one was C#. And the vast majority of people use C#, and then they eventually drop support for the other languages. And so with knowing that can happen, I would use the most popular language for whatever engine I'm using. And so I would just purely go on, this is the most popular one. So I'd go with GD script if I was starting today.
Awesome.
Because you want documentation, you want support, you want to be able to go in the forum and ask a question and get an answer from somebody, and whichever one is the most popular is going to be the one that's the most common to see answers in. And I have to Google and get Stack Overflow answers on everything, so I need docs, I need support. But yeah, you can also use, I think, C++ with Godot, and that just seems like extra effort with not much payoff. I'm not a super pro programmer.
What kind of projects do you do with your day job?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What kind of projects do you do with your day jobs?
Okay, yeah. So my day job at Glynis, I'm a UX designer. So basically what the position that I'm in, I'm not on a specific team. And so there are lots of projects that I kind of float around between. And I created and I maintain a design system. And the easy way to think about that is it's a theme for Bootstrap. And so we use Bootstrap 5, and I chose that on purpose because there are very few front-end developers or designers at my job, and Bootstrap is something that even back-end developers who don't want to touch the front end at all can easily do stuff with by looking at the Bootstrap docs, because again, it's very widely used and has really good documentation, and that's a great way to pick something. And so everything that I do is basically making a skin on top of Bootstrap to make it look like the applications, to make all 5 of the applications that we work on look as close together and related as possible. So they're really consistent. So we make a suite of applications. You can kind of think of it like Adobe Creative Suite, like between Illustrator and Photoshop and all of that. You want all of the UI to be very consistent so that people can use all of the applications and easily understand where things are. So I'm the guy who makes sure everything is consistent and has a certain standard of visual presence and looks good, but more importantly is easy to use. User experience, the UX part, the whole thing with user experience is just making sure that the end user can understand things intuitively, making sure that controls and buttons and everything are immediately understandable what they do. Making sure that we have a development team that works with another team in India, and a lot of the stuff that they do is they're very, very good at what they do, but they do exactly what you tell them to do. And so if we have our applications, the way a lot of times I'll be like a go-between between developers and designers to try to smooth over the communication, because I kind of understand both worlds. And so that's the kind of stuff I do. So like a day-to-day thing would be somebody comes to me with a mock-up, like a project manager comes to me with a mock-up that they've drawn in like something like Balsamic or PowerPoint or something, and they tell me this is the kind of thing that we need. We need a piece of the application that does this, and how should we lay out the buttons? Where should we put things to make it easy to use? And I'll kind of come back with feedback and make mock-ups and stuff. And so most of my work is in CSS and HTML, just because if I'm going to put in the time and effort to mock something up with Figma or with Photoshop or whatever, I already know how to do CSS and HTML, so I could just do it, and that way it's a little further along in the process, and it saves some time. So I usually go straight from idea to CSS and HTML, and I do a little bit of JavaScript, but not a lot, because they're better. They're people that are better at it than me. I'll let them do it.
So do you think that standalone games on PCs are a thing of the past?
Oh, definitely not. No, I think PC PC games are huge, especially with Steam. I mean, Steam is a marketplace for games. That's like an app store, and it's never been more popular than it is now. So PC games are huge. Consoles and PC are both big, and I don't see them going anywhere. There's a device that just came out called the Steam Deck, and it's kind of like the Nintendo Switch form factor, but it plays all of the Steam games that you might already have in your Steam library, and it's huge. Like they're on back order, or you have to wait for a turn to buy one. They're huge right now. So I think that's gonna it has a potential to make PC games even bigger than console, because now you could take all of your PC games in this little handheld console that's really well made. And we tested out our game on the Steam Deck. My friend has one, and it works great, without any modifications or anything.
Do you know what
So no, PC games are huge.
Do you know what engines they use to make PC games?
I'm sorry, it's just that connection might be bad. Could you repeat that?
What kind of engine do they use to make PC games?
So any game engine, almost every game engine that I've heard of makes games natively for PC. That's like the default, right? So like Unity, Godot, all kinds of other engines, Unreal Engine, PC is the default thing that it makes, because I would say 99% of people making any kind of games, computer or console, are making them on a PC. So you have to make sure your game runs on. I mean, like, that's how you test your game. So if you're making a game for Switch, you're going to be testing it on the computer, and then sometimes putting it on the Switch and trying it. Everything's default to PC. So almost every engine. There are very few engines that are specific for something and they don't run on the PC also.
Have you ever used the Unreal Engine?
And that's the place that everybody should start. Sorry, have I ever used what?
Have you ever used the Unreal Engine?
I haven't. I have some friends who have. One thing that I wanted to mention is, if anybody's interested in game development and wants to wants to ask more questions or get info after the talk, we have a Discord. I could post a link to that for our game dev community, and everybody is welcome to join and ask questions. And I have a friend, Alan, who's been doing some stuff with Unreal Engine recently. I have never actually opened up Unreal Engine, but I hear that it's good. They sure put a lot of money into it after Fortnite went big. So that was nice. I'm gonna get an invite link for the Discord if any of you all like to join. And this is the Kentucky Game Developer Discord. There we go.
So for a beginning developer, would you suggest taking a UX class in design as well when you're starting out?
For a beginning game developer, well, that depends on what you're interested in. Like if your goal is to make games, do you see yourself making the entire game, or do you see yourself being on a small team where you do code and someone else does art, or vice versa? So that would be the first question to think about. So the easy answer that I can give you is, if you're interested in making games, look into game jams. Has everybody here heard of a hackathon before? So hackathons and game jams are really similar. They're events where you try to make something in a short amount of time. Usually you join teams, but game jams are something that I've done a lot of them, because they're really fun, but also they're a great tool for learning how to work as a team and how to narrow your scope and try to make something really small within a certain amount of time. So a lot of the game jams that I've done are 48 hours. So you'll start on a Friday evening and work until Sunday evening, and you have to make something within that amount of time. So you have to keep it really small, and keeping it really small and simple is a great way to get started with it, because you're not trying to make the MMORPG that you've always dreamed of. You're just trying to make a little square move around on the screen and pick up some circles or something. You're trying to make something really simple, and then from there you can expand on that. So my question would be, are you wanting to do the art for games? Are you wanting to do the music for games? Do you want to do story? Do you want to do the programming? There's all kinds of different jobs, and if you want to do all of them, I'd recommend focusing on the programming first. If you want to do just one of those things, I would find some other folks that are interested in doing the other jobs, and start a little team and try to make something really small together.
I've actually been to a couple of.
I could send a link to
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You've been to a couple of.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of game jams. It was at EKU actually. I went, I think, 3 years in a row, and it was 48 hours. If we didn't upload it to, I think it was itch.io by, I think it was like 9 p.m. on the Sunday at the end, we had to upload it by that time, or it wouldn't count as a submission for it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I just sent a link to itch.io, which you just mentioned. So itch.io is a website that's the way I like to think of it is, it's kind of like an indie version of Steam. Like it's you can upload games to it. You don't have to get them approved by anybody. You don't have to charge for them. You can if you want to, but it's a place where you can host your games that you make without any kind of rules on any. I mean, like it could be a something you made during a game jam. You could host it on there, no problem. So I'd really recommend anybody who's interested in making games to get a itch.io account for free, and then just post your stuff on there, kind of like you do post your projects on GitHub. And they also have this resource. If you go to itch.io/jams, it shows all of the game jams that are going on right now. And I would just look at the list. It's a little overwhelming at first, but if you just try to look for things that you're interested in, like there's a you might find there's a GB jam. So maybe this is make a game that looks like it's a Game Boy game or something. And they all have different times for how long they last for, and some of them are specific to different parts of the world. But you can find something on here that's interesting to you, and maybe just pick one that's interesting and set aside a weekend and try to try to make something. Even if you're just watching YouTube tutorials and following along with them, if you put in the effort over that weekend to try to make something, you'll get further than you were before that weekend. So that would be my recommendation. And join our Discord if you're interested in making games. You can maybe talk about what kind of thing you'd like to make, and maybe say like, hey, I'd like to make a space shooter game, and I could do the art, but I don't know how to code. I don't know how to code, and maybe if somebody would like to code for that, they can, and show some of your artwork. Or if you're a programmer, you could show like, hey, I got these boxes moving around on the screen, and the game is starting to be a little fun, but I don't have any art for it. Does anybody want to do that? And you could kind of like find other people for your team that way. It's also really good to work with another person, or at least one other person, because of the like motivation of just like maybe you start getting bored with the thing, and the other person will make something cool for it, and then it kind of motivates you again. Or you can kind of check in with each other every week and show the progress that you've made, and it'll kind of encourage both of you to keep going. That's what it's done with me and Eric. Like I never finished a project before it was working with them. I would just start things and they would sit on my computer forever and never get finished. So somebody in the chat said there's a couple of artists that they watch on Twitch who seem to do game jams every weekend. Yeah, as well as stuff. So the thing with game jams is that, in my experience, I've been pretty impressed with what I've been able to achieve in a weekend. And it's really and there's sometimes when I work on something and it just is a flop and it just doesn't go anywhere. And the worst thing that can happen is you wasted a weekend. It's not that big of a deal. It's just 2 days or whatever. But most of the time, I'm pretty pleased with what I'm able to make. I think it's the focus. Like I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, and being able to work on something and just dedicate a certain amount of time to it helps me. Just listen to some music and focus on one thing. Normally, I'm distracted by a dozen things all at once. So having a dedicated weekend where it's just like, I'm working on this game this weekend, that's the only thing other than eating and sleeping. I'm going to do that. Works out pretty well. But yeah, anybody else have any questions? And if anybody wants to ask anything and they don't want to say it here, you can always just message me on Discord or whatever. I hope I was able to be a little helpful. I tried not to. I tried to make the talk more about career stuff than game dev stuff, because, like I said, if I'm honest about it, I mean, I have a website that says that I run a game dev company, but we haven't made any money. So you all probably don't want advice on how to have a career where you don't make enough to live off of. So I do games on the side. And that's perfectly fine, because I enjoy doing it and nobody tells me what to do. What was that?
Is there such a thing as an internship for game development?
Yeah, so I'm sure if you live in a city where there are bigger game companies, that would be a thing. But as far as I know in Louisville, making a video game is basically you're starting your own small company to do that. And I've pretty extensively talked to all the game developers that I can find around here, and there's not really anybody who's hiring. It's or doing internships that are of any real value. Like we've had a couple of interns with 2Scoop, and it's basically been like come and hang out with us and we'll show you some stuff, because it's not really like we can have you do any work, because we're just working on our projects and we don't have anybody really telling us when to finish them or anything. We're just working on them as we go.
Could that be due to marketing issues?
But if you lived in a city, someplace else, yeah. So hopefully one day we'll be able to put Louisville on the map as a place where games that people have heard of come from. The closest that we have to that right now is there's a Friday the 13th game that was made by some folks in Lexington. I think that might be the one that people might have heard of. I think that one of the developers of Terraria is in Southern Indiana, but nobody's ever talked to him.
Have you considered talking to a marketer?
I'm sorry, Mary, what was the last question?
Have you considered talking to a marketer, someone who's into marketing?
Oh yeah, so yeah, when I talk to marketing people, I usually try to get as much information as I can for free, because I don't have any money to pay anybody to do marketing for my games. And I try to learn as much as I can about marketing from videos and stuff that I find online. And I do the marketing for our game, and it's a real tough job. It's the thing that a lot of people don't think of when they start getting into making games, is that if you actually want to sell these games, you're going to have to market them. And it's not like you just make a game and put it out there and then people buy it. Even if your game is great, when you put it out there, you're releasing it on the same day that 500 other games are coming out. And so you're just going to get lost in the shuffle. And so the marketing stuff is extremely important. And it's tough, because there's a couple of options with that. One of them is doing it yourself, which we've chosen to do so far. The other option is to get a publisher. To get a publisher, your game has to be up to snuff for a publisher to care about it. There are low-level publishers that will publish anything, but they're basically just a kind of borderline predatory. Like they just want to take 30% of your profits and that's it. And then there are higher end publishers that won't take your stuff unless it's really good, and they can already know that it's going to do well, so they're going to take it. So it's not like the publisher thing. Some people in the game dev world think of it as like a band getting signed to a label. It's not really like that. It's a lot tougher than that even is, and that's already tough from what I hear. And so it's like you do the marketing yourself and make your game really, really good, and then maybe after somebody's heard of your first game, then your next game has a chance to do better. It's a really, really brutal world. But the thing that's really cool about it is like everybody's in this really hard industry. And so all of the other developers are super, super nice to each other and helpful and not competitive. And everybody wants to help everybody out, because we're all in this boat together and it's really hard. And so like every game dev that I've met from other cities or wherever have been super friendly and helpful, because even though we're all competing with each other, but we don't treat it like that. And then when somebody makes it, has a success, then you cheer for them and hope that yours will happen someday. But you can get a day job working for a healthcare company or something and have a stable living and do do the game stuff on the side, and that's great because then you can actually have consistent income.
I was wondering because when I started playing games on the computer, mostly it was like on Facebook.
It was like on what?
Facebook. And then I started playing them on my phone after that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so those they're I haven't really done Facebook games is kind of like its own platform. I haven't really done much with that. It's kind of like mobile. Like I don't really do too much with mobile stuff anymore because the market is really tough. Like there's like when I mentioned 500 games coming out per day, that's like an estimate for mobile. So we're trying to do Steam and console where it's more like 100 or 50 games coming out a day. So it's a little bit more of a chance of getting seen. I don't know how things are on Facebook, but I think developers, especially since we're doing it, just as a hobby that we hope will take off someday, it's like we make the games that we want to play, and so the games that I want to play are usually on Steam or on consoles. So we're kind of making stuff like that we would like, and hopefully there are other people like us out there that like them too. But if somebody really like Facebook and mobile games and stuff, and they have a great idea for something, that you do what you like to do. Like make something that you would like to play.
Probably the best advice I've gotten.
Especially if there's not a super big chance of making a living off of it, but you might as well do something that's really fun for you and that you enjoy. But making games is a great way to learn programming, but it's a different it's a bit of a different world if you want to do it for a career. It's tricky. But yeah, I heard somebody said that they were going to try the demo tonight. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'll post a link to the Kickbot demo. Might as well. Always open to feedback. It's a pretty challenging game. There's 14 levels in the demo, and it shows I think it goes through 5 of the 8 worlds that are going to be in the game, so you get a bit of variety. And yeah, we're going to try to the Switch thing is kind of a secret, so don't tell anybody, but we're going to do a big marketing push when we announce that we're coming out on Switch, and try to get people excited about it.
Don't underestimate the power of Pinterest.
Yep. Well, I think that's about it. Does anybody else have any last questions? And if not, what was that?
Yeah, I do have a question. Is my mic on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, then. Thank you. I was just wondering, I have this issue with trying to get stuff done. Like I might have multiple objectives I need to get done. Like say I need to code for this, but then I hit a brick wall, so I take a break from it, go do something else in the code. But I'm wondering if that's not really a good thing to do. Is that all right? Or because I feel like it might lead to some messy development workflow.
Yeah, I think I was cutting out a little bit there, but I think I got what you're saying. Like it's you have a lot of things going on, and it's tricky to know what to work on, Nick.
Yeah, with a project, for example. I might have to.
Well, the best thing, I have a lot of trouble with that too, honestly. I have a really short attention span, and if something doesn't interest me, I kind of float away. But I would say that the best thing that I've found is to block out time to do a certain thing. So I use Trello, which is a free tool that you can use to make lists and tasks and stuff. It's like a project management thing. I'll just like dump everything from my head, like say like these are all the things that I have to do, and then I'll just try to focus on the top one, and maybe try to organize them and then focus on the top one until I'm done with that, and then move to the next one. It's way easier said than done, especially for me. I get distracted so easily. But blocking out time works for me. Is where I say like, okay, for the next hour, I'm not going to touch anything else other than this one task, and unless it's done.
Okay.
And that helps me a little bit, just time blocking. But still, I mean, there could be whole days that go by, and I've just context switched over and over, and I have nothing done. It's really tough.
Yeah, that's my current problem too. But I will try that out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you coming. And this is the first talk that I've given in like 3 years or something. So I hope that it was coherent. And I hope that it was a little bit helpful. But please reach out if you have any other questions, and join the Kentucky Game Developer Discord that I sent the link to. Discord is a chat program that's very similar to Slack, if you're not familiar with it, and it's a great place to get involved with the game dev community. Everybody's super friendly and helpful. And best of luck with Code Louisville. I think it's an awesome program. And if anybody, like I said, if anybody has any questions, needs anything, just let me know. I'm always available, and I try to be helpful. And you're doing great. If you're here, you're on the right track, because you're putting in effort to further your learning and everything, and that's really important. Just keep doing it. And some days will seem like it's so tricky and you have no idea what you're doing, and I have those days too, even though I've been doing it for a long time. It's normal. You'll get through it. Now have a great evening.
All right, thank you, Alex. Everyone, thank you for coming out tonight. We have a lot more wonderful Monday guest speakers lined up for you. So if you haven't signed up for them, make sure you check the list so that you can sign up. And the recording of this, minus the first half an hour, I don't know what happened there, but the recording of this should be available soon. So good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.